Alright, hello everyone. I figured I should make probably a supplemental video about how my farms work. So the wheat farm and the cow farm both rely on computers, and I didn't really show off how they work or anything like that, so hopefully this shouldn't be too long. I have the video muted just because the cows are extremely loud, but I'm just going to walk through how these things work in case you're curious on the details of it, or you want to remake it in your own world, or just understand ComputerCraft a little bit better. So let's start with this this wheat farm here. Okay, so I have one program here. It's just called farm. So we basically just have a bunch of different functions. I think it might make most sense to start at the actual main method, I guess you could call it. But this comment here, eventually I'll have a master computer similar to how I did with the turtle farm, where the master computer will basically just send this turtle out after every interval of time or something like that. But basically what it does is the first thing it will do is get the current fuel level, and then if it's less than 300, which is about the amount of fuel that this run takes, it will refuel. It will then select the number 2 slot, which as you can see holds seeds, and then it will farm rows. So I have a variable rows set at the very top, and that is set to 7. So this loop will run 7 times. And so for each row, it will farm the row, and then if it gets to why is this here? Okay, yeah, sorry. Had to re-remember what everything does. But so basically it will farm the row, and then there are basically 3 options. So if the row that it is currently farming is the last row, then it will just break out of this loop, so it won't do anything else. And then this % sign here is a modulus operator. So basically what that does is it will divide I, which is the current row, by 2, and then it will get the remainder. And so if the remainder is 1, which if you think about it, if you divide something by 2 and the remainder is 1, then that means you just have an odd number. So for all of the odd number rows, like 1, 3, 5, and 7, it will turn right. So, when you kind of think about it, whenever this turtle goes forward here, the next row is to its right, so it'll need to turn right and go there. And then whenever it's coming back on row 2, it'll be facing this way, so then it will need to turn left to go to the next row. And then when it's done, it will just sleep for 1 second, print done. That's not really useful, that's kind of just left over from when I was trying to fix it because it was broken. And then it will go back to the docking station and dump all of its items. Okay, so let's go through what all these functions do. So the first one is just to farm a row. So while turtle doesn't detect anything, so basically while there is an air block in front of it, it will dig down, which will harvest the wheat, and then it will place down the seeds, since it selects the second slot as soon as it goes, and then it will move forward. And then, once it gets to the end, it will do that again. But once it gets to the end, there'll be like a wall in front of it, so you have to do it one more time at the end, or it'll leave a piece of wheat unharvested at the very end, and I think you could see that in the actual video. And then function is refuel. Pretty simple. You just turn to the fuel chest, take 3 pieces of coal, and then refuel. Not too much going on there. And then the go back command is actually pretty simple. You're basically just going to turn left, go forward while there's no blocks in front of you. Basically just go forward until you hit a wall. Then you're going to turn left, and then you're going to do the exact same thing. You're going to go forward until you hit a wall, and then you just turn back around. So whenever it gets to the end of the route, it will be in that far corner there. So once it gets there, it'll turn left, go hit that wall, turn left, and then go until it hits this chest here, which I think is actually the fuel chest. And then to dump, that's again pretty simple. You just turn right when this is the output chest. And then it actually loops through every inventory slot. So you start at 3 and then you go to 16. So you start at this 3rd slot after the seeds, and then you dump the contents of each one of these slots into the chest, and then you select the 1st slot and then drop that as well. So basically you just dump the contents of every single slot into the chest except for number 2. This slot is important to keep seeds in, so that it can always plant crops back after it harvests them. And then this turn function is just kind of a helper function. So basically it's not quite as simple as getting to the end and then turning to the next direction, because you have to finish this row, turn right, go forward, and then turn right, and then you're on the next row. So that's basically what this does, and it just lets me specify the direction if I want to go left or right. So if the direction is left, it will turn left, move forward, and then there's actually a little bit of added logic here. So this is basically to handle the cases where there is water. So there's two water streams that hydrate the crops. So basically what it does is if there's nothing detected underneath the turtle, and so, you know, for the normal crops there's, you know, crops there, wheat there, but if it's going over the water, then there will be nothing in this block here, so it'll just be air. And so it checks for that, and if there's nothing under it, or basically if there's water underneath it, then it will go forward again. And then if there's none, then it will just ignore this, and then it will just turn left again. So it's basically just a way to get the turtle going back in the right direction once it reaches the end of the row, and also takes into account the water there, so it doesn't, you know, waste time running along a water stream harvesting nothing. Hopefully that part makes sense. And yeah, that's it. That's how the farm works. Pretty straightforward, I think. That's kind of why I had to have the glass panes here, is because whenever it runs, it just runs until the end of the row. So if these weren't here, then it would just continue running and then run into this wall. So I guess just kind of like one final thing of how it works. So it'll refuel if it is less than 300 fuel, and then it will go forward until it cannot go forward anymore, and on each block it will harvest the wheat and then replant the seeds. Once it gets to the end, if it is an odd number, it will turn right, move forward, and then turn right again to get it going in the right direction. Then it will harvest until it can't go forward anymore, and then since it's an even number, which since this is row 2, it will turn left, go forward, detect if there's an air block underneath it, and in this case there will be because there's no crops there because it's above water. And then it goes forward again, and then it will turn left, and then go forward and finish off. Sorry about that, I had to mute my Discord. Yeah, and then it will continue going until it reaches the very end, which will be that corner there, and then it will turn left, go until it hits a wall, turn left again until it hits this chest, it will turn around, and then dump all of the contents of its inventory except for one slot of seeds into this chest, and then from that chest it will get pumped out underground and into a feeder, which is actually in the middle of these cows. You can't see it. Okay, you can kind of see it, that little piece of wood there. That's where all the wheat gets harvested, or all the wheat gets stored, and that will automatically breed the cows. Okay, we're going to take a little shortcut into this back area where I have this computer. And as you'll see, this computer is next to this. So this is actually a sensor controller, which is a part of the CC Sensors mod. I think it only exists in this version of Minecraft. I don't think they've ever updated it. It's a little bit not perfect, you know, it's a little bit frustrating to use sometimes, but it still allows you to do some really cool things. So if we go to the sensor, we'll see we have two sensors available, and one of those sensors is actually right here. Right there. Let me see if I can get a block under here. But there's a sensor right there, and what this does is you can see it has an inventory sensor module, and it's named deployer sensor. I named that myself. And it allows you to see the inventory content of everything around it. So you'll see it has two targets, the sensor controller and the deployer. And the deployer is what we're interested in, and you'll see that in the inventory it has one lava bucket in it. And then we have another sensor actually inside the cow pit. Let me get in there. It's probably going to be hard to click on. Let's see if I can get this. Okay, and then we have a sensor here that has named cow sensor, and inside it has a proximity sensor, and this basically allows me to detect all of the living entities within the range. So you'll see there are 33 targets, and then just a bunch of cows in here, and I think I'm probably in here too. But yeah, and then we go back, and this sensor controller back here is basically where all of the data gets sent to of those two sensors, the cow sensor and the deployer sensor. And this computer, let me stop this running really quick, has a startup command which accesses this controller and uses its data. So the first thing we do is load the sensor's API, and then the controller is on the left side of the computer, because the screen is actually facing this way. So if you look at it like this, then it is on, you know, the left side. And then there's a function has lava. So basically what we do is we have the sensor in here, and we named it deployer sensor and the sensor itself. And the probe we want is the inventory content, which you could see on the actual sensor itself here. So these are the probes here. You have target info, and inventory content. So we're interested in the inventory content because this is where we see that the deployer has a lava bucket. So we specify that sensor and that specific probe. We get the targets, which will give us, you know, the sensor controller and the deployer. We get the second item in the list, which is the deployer, and then we get the data from it. And then we basically just loop through the data, basically everything in the deployer, and we're looking for if the item contains lava. So if we look in here at the inventory content, we'll see that it has bucket lava. So I could write this entire thing out, but I just didn't want to do that, so we're just looking if the string contains the word lava. And if there's a lava bucket in there, then it will contain the word lava. But if there's an empty bucket, it will just be like item.bucket and not item.bucket lava. And so what it does is if it finds an item in there with lava in it, then it will return true since it has lava. And then if it does not, so if there's an empty bucket, then it will return false since there is no lava. We also have another method here for getting the number of cows. So the sensor is the cow sensor, and the probe is living entities. And the next thing we do is set the sensor range to 3. So I think the default sensor range is something larger than 3, because I used to get like random squids and like other mobs getting in the sensor range. But I just set it to 3, so it should only count the mobs that are in range of, or basically just in the area of the farm. So we set the range to 3, so it only gets all the animals in the farm. We get all of the available targets for the probe, and then we just count everything. Basically just count the number of targets. I wish there was an easier way to do this, but there's not. And then we just return that count. Then we have a simple function here called pulse. It just sends out a redstone pulse. It'll just set the redstone to true, or turn on the redstone, sleep for a second, and then turn it off. So it'll just go like on, off, send out a simple redstone pulse. And then the basic loop is it'll wait a second, it will see the number of cows in lava, or see the number of cows that are in the farm, and then print if it currently has lava. This is just a debugging thing. This doesn't actually, you know, help anything. And if the number of cows is less than or equal to 25, and the deployer does not have lava, and if you think if the deployer does not have lava, then that means that the lava is in the farm, it's been placed. So if there's less than 25 cows, and the lava is currently placed, then it will pulse. And I also have a print here saying off. But when it pulses, it will activate the deployer, which will pick up the lava, so it's no longer killing cows in the farm. And then else if the number of cows is greater than or equal to 40. I originally had this as 50, and I think I'll put it back up there, but if the number of cows is greater than or equal to 50, and the deployer has lava, then it will pulse and start killing the cows. And then it will do that until, again, you know, it reaches less than or equal to 25, and then it will turn it back off. So that's the basic rundown of how this works. And then you have a deployer here with lava, and then whenever, you know, the number of cows reaches 50, it will pulse this redstone here, which will activate this deployer. It will place the lava against this block, flow down, and I actually have a sign under there. You probably can't see it because that cow's hiding it. But this one bit of air here will be filled with lava, and then the cows will just kind of push themselves into the lava over time and start dying, giving me cooked steak, which is nice. And then once the sensor reading turns to, or once the number of cows reaches 25, it will activate the deployer again, which will pick up the lava and stop them from dying, so that they can be repopulated by the feeder there. And then I have a few transposers at the bottom there, you can kind of see it there, which takes the drops and puts them into this chest here. And that's basically the rundown of how this farm works. Alright, hopefully that wasn't too much of a yap fest and you could, get something out of it. Either, learn how ComputerCraft works or, inspire you to make your own farm. But, yeah, hopefully you enjoyed. And, I think this was built in, I want to say, episode 6. So if you want to check that out, go watch that episode, and that's when I actually, build all this stuff and put it together. So, yeah, hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching.